Hey everybody, my name is Kelly and I am shooting a YouTube video in my car. Woo, in my car. Okay, you might be asking, Kelly, why are you shooting this video in your car? And I'll tell you why. So first, out there is a cemetery. And I just finished a video, or maybe two videos, where I walked around the cemetery to explain my upcoming blog project for my study abroad trip in Paris, France. And now I'm sort of shooting the intro to the actual video. Don't mind me, it's okay. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do, right? So yeah, I'm in my car. I'm sitting at the cemetery where I just shot my videos, and now I'm going to introduce myself. So I'm Kelly Pratt, and I am a student at the University of Mary Washington. I am a historic preservation major and a urban studies minor. I recently took a study abroad class. It's called Historic Preservation Abroad. And my professor, who is Parisian and also American, led a group of, I don't know how many, maybe 15 of us on a trip to Paris where we visited, I don't know, like 500 museums, cemeteries, everything. We did the whole run. We hit as many places as we could in a very short amount of time. We were there for 1 month. But I found while I was there that I did not really get the experience that I wanted. It was an amazing experience, don't get me wrong. But I found myself often wandering from the group, often in the back of the group, trying to take pictures, trying to explore things that I found interesting, which weren't necessarily things that were part of the curriculum. They weren't necessarily things that we even had time to focus on. Because this was like a really broad overview of like all things preservation. So yes, we went to museums, we went to historic areas, which I'm like, it's Paris, so what isn't historic, right? We looked at architecture, we looked at bridges, we talked about the history and the construction and reconstruction, and we traveled to, it's called Troy? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm studying French, but like some of the pronunciation still gets me. But anyway, we traveled to another location and looked at some of the things there. And we went all over. We looked at art and sculpture and gardens and creation of green spaces versus residential spaces and traffic patterns. Like we really did the whole 9 yards. And so you can imagine, you know, if you're passionate about something like me and cemeteries, we spent a lot of time visiting cemeteries, but I just was not able to explore the way I wanted to. So as soon as I came back from Paris, I had a really new passion and appreciation for the place. But before going to Paris, I didn't really have much of a desire to go. I was really only going because this course met several of my requirements for my historic preservation major. And I was like, it might be cool to travel to Europe and see some things I hadn't seen. Because up to this point, I've only been in China, Japan, and South Korea. And so I've never been to like a European country. So yeah, I came back with a passion for some things in Paris, and I decided I wanted to go back. Almost immediately, I decided I wanted to go back. But how to do that, right? So I talked with my advisor, who's also the teacher who led our study abroad group. And she was like, we'll start studying French and, you know, go back and study French in Paris. And I was like, okay, that sounds good for me. So this whole thing is a means to an end. I'm taking French studies in Paris so that I can really investigate Parisian cemeteries. And I kind of want to do it, you know, when I was there, everything was presented to me from the perspective of my professor, which is an amazing perspective. She's very knowledgeable in all things preservation and like urban planning. she teaches a lot of the urban planning classes. And her insight is really magnificent, especially since she is, also Parisian. But I really wanted to focus in on some things, which I cover in my video, so I'm not going to get too much into it right now. But I really wanted to focus in on a comparison of burial practices and cultural expectations, not really burial practices per se, but our approach to burials and the expectations and treatment of burials and cemeteries, and cemetery care. And while I want to connect that to cemeteries on a large scale in America, I really want to hone in on minority cemeteries, those underrepresented groups, those groups that don't really have a voice, don't really get the funding that they need to take care of their cemeteries, things like that. Because what I see in Paris, or what I saw in Paris, was a lot of well cared for cemeteries. And I didn't see like new cemeteries, if that makes sense. They were all fairly old, fairly historic. Whereas in America, we have a lot of modern cemeteries. And I know you'll be like, well, Paris is part of the old world. Like it's much older than the United States. And that is true. But we have cemeteries in our country that date back to the 16 and 1700s. And some possibly before that. I'm not like a super expert on all of the cemeteries across the whole United States. But if we look at Native peoples and their practices, we could probably go even further back. But I'm just focusing on like the America as a combined nation, after some of the things that went down historically with the Native groups. I don't really want that to be the focus of this podcast. Or the podcast. Yeah, YouTube video. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about like weird myths and practices, like the unexplained things, aliens and government conspiracies, all kinds of fun things that I don't really believe in, but I've got podcasts on the brain. That's all I'm saying. I've been like binging this new podcast I found. Anyway, I want to look at the care of cemeteries, the funding for cemeteries, the preservation of cemeteries. I want to look at burial practices in regards to how do cemetery owners, or whatever the word is, stewards of cemeteries, how do they use the cemeteries? Are people often buried in pre-existing plots that already have remains in them? Because that's something we don't necessarily do here. What are some of the practices for family plots and sharing of family plots, transferring of family plots from one family member to another? With my dad just recently dying and him and my mom sharing a burial location, it brought up a whole new range of questions for me in that regard. And then I just want to look at the idea of disinterment, relocation of cemeteries, which is a big thing in America. A lot of people may not know that, but African American cemeteries are often just picked up and moved. And I use that term lightly because if a space is, 100 years old, what can you move and how do you move it? Because things do break down over time. I've heard, I won't get into it, but so I want to look at that. And I want to look at the French processes. Our first cemeteries here in America were our first parks. We didn't really have parks prior to cemeteries. And our first cemeteries were modeled after French cemeteries. And I will connect you, I'll do the research, which I'm already familiar with actually, but connect the dots for you there. Our first major cemeteries here in the United States were modeled after French cemeteries. And I want to look at when that practice stopped. When did we stop following the model set out by countries older than us, more educated than us in certain areas, just due to their experience on the planet, their collective experience on the planet? And when did we break away from that to follow our own burial practices? How has our American way of thinking influenced our burial practices? And do we need to change? Space, and people always say we have plenty of space in America, but in fact, space is limited. I live in an area where it's very difficult for people to get housing. Some people, you'll have one family living on 5 to 10 acres of land, and in other spaces you'll have 500 families living on 5 to 10 acres of land because they're all in like high-rise apartments. But oftentimes there are many homeless people in my area. Housing security is a big issue. And space is limited because people don't want to provide housing for low-income people and things like that, which I don't want to get into that either, but this is sort of laying the groundwork for the direction I'm going here. I don't want to get too political with anything. I don't want to dig too deeply into any of these issues, like these side issues I'm bringing up. I'm just trying to build the case for why this is important. And so anyway, the point is space is limited. Cemeteries take up a lot of space. As I told you, the one here is like 50 acres, something like that. The one literally right beside this cemetery, they share a border, is like 25 acres, something like that. So you have 100 acres of land dedicated cemetery space. This under conservation easement, meaning no one can develop the space. It will stay a cemetery throughout all eternity. Even if somebody else buys the land, it will still be a cemetery. It's protected. However, it is not protected from nature. I just want to throw that in there. But it is protected from development. But this space houses, I don't know, potentially 50,000 burials, maybe. It is not open. There are no active burials happening here. There's no money coming into the space. It is historic. There are easily 100 or more historic people out here, vital to the creation of the Richmond area and Virginia as a whole. I shouldn't say like creation, but they really contributed to the history of these spaces. A lot of things we have today we would not have without these folks. So there's that kind of perspective. I also want to think about, the reusal of space. So we have these cemeteries. I'm just going to use the two where I'm at as an example. We have these cemeteries, all this land. It's not being used anymore. People still call today to find out if they can bury family members out here because maybe their mom is here and their dad just died and they want to bury their dad and they can't because the cemetery is no longer open. And a lot of that is because of our burial practices. Had this been a Parisian cemetery, they'd probably been like, well, yeah, your mom died, 20 years ago. Sure, we can put your dad in there, no problem. When you just think about remains and how things break down and that kind of thing. Also the idea of cremation. Maybe you can't put a whole coffin in there, but we could put cremains. So there are considerations like that. And I don't know what Parisian cemeteries are doing. I'm just making guesses based on my last visit and some things that I've heard and read. But in fact, I don't actually know what they're doing. I don't know what their practices are. But I get the feeling they are vastly different from ours. So I want to explore those differences. I want to learn what I can learn and see if there are things that I could present to the American public as, hey, maybe we should consider this. Maybe we should think about this. Our future is one of uncertainty in regards to cemeteries, in regards to space, in regards to housing. And so we really have to be proactive in addressing these problems before we are in a crisis situation, which is commonly what happens in America. We see problems coming. People talk about it in the news. People talk about it at a local level, but nothing happens until we are at a crisis point, and suddenly all of these laws and plans and money is thrown at a situation, and it doesn't actually help the situation. It's like a Band-Aid. A lot of times more problems come from these so-called fixes. And so it's my theory that if we were more proactive and didn't wait for a crisis point, that we would have time to plan, and we would have time to think through pros and cons and possibilities, and to begin setting aside funding and programs and building staff and organizations that can address the needs that will come in the foreseeable future. So yeah, that's a lot. This is like a 16-minute video, and I haven't even gotten into the actual video where we walk through the cemetery. That might be like a part 2. I don't know. I'm a fan of YouTube videos that are like an hour long. I love watching those. I'm like, give me a movie. Absolutely. So an hour and a half, that is the norm for me. I love it. Videos that are 15 minutes to 20 minutes, I usually completely bypass on the internet. So you may get longer videos from me just because I like that. But I will try and keep something short and sweet, just because probably my time will be limited when I'm there in Paris. Right now I have some time, so I'm taking some time. Or maybe I will break these videos up into smaller segments and just put them in playlists. We'll see. I haven't really played with YouTube that much. I've only used it for training videos and for some school projects. So I've never actually like run a channel. So this will be a new experience all around, and I'm excited for it. So I'm going to think back to some of the requirements for this blog, because this blog is for scholarship. It's the Fund for Education Abroad, FEA scholarship. And this video is going to be on YouTube, but it will also be on my like diary at the FEA site. And you will be able to view it. I also talked with a professional and friend in the preservation field who said that they might like to link these videos on their website for the larger public to engage with. So we'll see what happens with these videos. We'll see where it goes. I may get into this and find out it's a huge mess and I didn't realize what I was getting into. But that's okay. That's okay. We're learning together, and it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. Yeah. But yeah, this is what we're working with. I'm looking at cemeteries, thinking about cemetery stuff, thinking about minority issues, and hoping for good grades in French. Yeah. All right. So moving away from the whole topic and why I'm doing this blog, you now have it. You now know what the deal is. Tell you about myself. I am going to be studying in Paris. I'm going to be there for a month. So from the end of June to the end of July, I'll be studying at the Catholique Institute de Catholique, something like that, in Paris. Catholic school. I'm not sure. I know that Parisians and French people as a whole do religion differently from us, right? So I'm not thinking I'm going to be in a Catholic school, like having a full Catholic experience. I feel like it's going to be an educational institution, just like any educational institution. I did notice most of the people who are part of my study abroad group, and I'm studying with AIFS, they have several locations in Paris where people can study French. One is at the Sorbonne, and like a lot of people are going there, which I understand. It's a super famous school. But when I thought about the location, I wanted to be in a different location. I actually wanted to be close to Marais, which is like the Jewish / LGBTQ sort of district in Paris. I really like the vibe and the feel in that place, and I want it to be close to there. So where I am is not too far. I'll be in Saint-Germain, near the what's the name of the flower garden? The Luxembourg. Yeah, Luxembourg Gardens. So it's a really nice area. It's close to the RATP, the metro out there. And so, yeah, it should be a good experience. I'm happy with the location. I do not know anything about the school. I don't know their teaching style, the living arrangements, anything. I know none of that. But I feel like I chose the best place for me, even if I'm like the only student studying there, which it kind of feels that way right now. Everyone on the FEA scholarship that's in Paris or in France and on this AIFS abroad site, none of them seem to be at the same school as me. So that's going to be an interesting experience. I wonder if I'm going to have buddies to hang out with, or if it's just going to be me. I'm good either way. I plan on meeting friends in Paris anyway. Usually when I fly solo, people just find me. I mean, like complete strangers. Like I usually connect with someone. So we'll see what happens. And last year I met 2 really cool friends out in Paris, stayed friends this whole time. Like we chat online on WhatsApp. So yeah, I'm not at all concerned about friendship or being alone or anything like that. In fact, if I'm forced to find friends in Paris, it's my hope that they speak French so that I can practice. And maybe they'll go on some journeys with me and help me understand some more things about the cemeteries out there. Let's see, what else? I'm going to be, I'm doing like the basic studies. They have like an intensive sort of immersion studies thing, but it seemed like it would be too much for me. And I wouldn't have time to do what I wanted to do in my free time. So there's that. I do plan to visit another city nearby. I haven't decided which one. I heard that there's like an American soldier burial ground from, I don't know, it was World War I or World War II, one of those. But somewhere in France. It is not near Paris. It's pretty far out by train. I might have to do like a day's journey or something, maybe over a weekend or during the holiday. I'm not sure. But I would really love to do that if possible. If not, that's okay too. It happens, right? You don't always get to do what you want to do. So yeah, we'll see. I don't really have anything else to say. I should have the paperwork in front of me telling me sort of what we need to address, but I forgot. I'm sure it'll come up in other videos though, because as you can tell, I like to talk and I have a lot to say. So you will learn about me. Hopefully you'll leave comments and I'll learn about you. And, also leave questions, because that'll help me as I go on my journeys to know what people are interested in, what they might want to hear about, what they want to learn about, what they want to see. So yeah, leave comments and questions related to cemeteries, please. I want to keep this topic specific. And yeah, that'll be great. So this is Kelly. I am logging off. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.